Hello and welcome to everyone in the chat and those of you watching on the VOD. It is your esteemed host, Mr. Shintigercurl, that dude in the straw hat, bringing you yet another edition of Shintigercurl Streamin. I see CJ's in the chat. He's still without power after last week's extremely bad storm. Hopefully it's okay, man. If you can't catch it, just catch it on the VOD. It's all good. Of course, Devil in the chat, welcome one and all. It's Tuesday, May 25th, May 21st, 2024. Don't get my date. I got my dates all wrong. But nonetheless, it's another day. It's another time to check out 2 more chapters of New World. But you already know what we got to do before that. You got to get your guns out, lock and load, because it's time to shoot the shit. That's right. Quite a bit to talk about in the last couple of days, of course. Still waiting patiently for the newest chapter of One Piece to hit the stands. Took a week off for them, for Oda for some reason. Oda can create as much as he wants, so hopefully we're gonna we're finally gonna get some much needed backstory about the elusive individual known as Joy Boy, who is called by Dr. Vegapunk as the first pirate. Yep, that's some good stuff to look forward to for later this week. Wrestling front. As we just, if you didn't catch up in the social fronts, Ruby Soho and Cool Hand Ange, Angelo Parker, jumped the broom. That's right. In case you didn't know, the two of them were on an on-screen romance that was actually a real romance. And a few weeks ago, during a taping of Dynamite, Ruby announced to Ange and to the crowd in general that she was expecting. And so over the weekend, the two of them decided to get married. So congratulations to the runaway and Cool Hand Ange. Lovely couple, very lovely couple, and already showing that little adorable baby bump of hers. She's going to be a great mother. Saw a lot of the ladies from across wrestling who appeared at the wedding, including the current AEW Women's World Champion Timeless Toni Storm. And a picture that I posted, that I shared on my Facebook page. All the ladies were there, and Timeless Toni Storm was the only one completely in monochrome. Even when celebrating a friend's wedding, Toni Storm has to stay in character. There's that. Let's see. More stuff going down as it is revealed. It was it's, as it turns out. Hold on. Sneeze coming. Excuse me. Anyway, last night, Gunther defeats main event Yeet J as he makes it all the way to the finals of the King of the Ring tournament. I told you that he's the one I really wanted to. Oh shit. Man, what the hell's up with me today? So anyway, Gunther heading to is looking to top off his record-setting Intercontinental title run by becoming King of the Ring, which would cap off a very good career and probably propel him into main event status, as he would probably go after a world title. But whose world title is he going after? Could he be going after Damian Priest or going after Cody Rhodes? Who knows? But I'm certainly proud of him. I was, like a lot of people, I was very iffy on him joining the main roster because, as we all know, the Triple H creates and Vince McMahon destroys. But thankfully, despite his name change, Gunther has showcased himself to be as dominant and as terrifying on the main roster as he was in NXT UK. So that's good stuff. Double or Nothing is this Saturday. 5 years. It's been 5 years since AEW was founded, and it's been some rough times. Yeah, King of the Ring can do wonders for your career unless your name is Billy Gunn. I'm sorry, daddy ass, but that's just the realization of it. But yeah, Double or Nothing this Saturday, triple main event, of course. We got, of course, the Anarchy in the Arena match pitting the New Elite versus Team AEW, consisting of Bryan Danielson, FTR, and the replacement for the Mad King, Eddie Kingston, being none other than Darby Allin. That's right. This will actually be the first match where Darby Allin faces off against Jack Perry since their epic Fatal 4-Way last year against the other Pillars, the Pillars Fatal 4-Way. That was a spectacular match. Woo. And I'm looking forward to this. Also, in the other main event, it will be the in-ring debut, AEW debut of Mercedes Moné as she takes on Willow Nightingale, the woman who put her on the shelf for several months as the New Japan Strong Women's World Champion. And of course, the main event, Swerve Strickland defending against Father of the Year, leader of the Patriarchy, Mr. Christian Cage. And Christian is being the absolute bastard that he is, and I am all the way here for it. Also, other important wrestling news. If you're not interested, if you're not curious, it stems from a guy named Kicking It with Ross. He is a reactor on YouTube with about 200,000 followers, 200,000 subscribers. He does a lot of wrestling reaction videos, and he reacted to a video talking about the downfall of Twitter's favorite thin-skinned big guy, Ryback. Ryback didn't take too kindly to this, and so he said he bet you he wouldn't do it on his own podcast. So Ross said, bet, give me the time and place, I'll show up. So Ross appeared on Ryback's podcast, where Ryback pretty much whined, bitched, and moaned and didn't really give Ross much time to do anything. But Ross was far fairer than Ryback really deserved. And he was about to talk about, and just when he's about he was going to shoot a video talking about his experiences with Ryback, until he found out that Ryback had blocked him on Twitter. Ryback pretty much has 85% of Twitter blocked at this point for whatever reason. Once again, showcasing that the big guy has really thin skin. Say what you want about CM Punk. One of the few things he was right about was Ryback and his total bitchness, for the sake of the word. So yeah, Ross went from being on the fence with Ryback to now just being one of his biggest detractors, which is saying something considering that everyone is his biggest detractor. Yeah. There's that. You suck, Ryback. Ryback is the DSP of wrestling. He got a little bit of fame, went to his head, and then he just went blah. Just went blah. Also, controversial news coming out of Ubisoft as they released the trailer to the next Assassin's Creed game, Assassin's Creed Shadows, and this has gotten a lot of people pissed off. Well, for me, it's stupid, but not for the reasons you think, because for the first time in the series, the main protagonist will be a historical figure, a real-life historical figure. I know people are saying Ezio was a real-life historical figure, but that's a bit iffy, at least for me. But Assassin's Creed Shadows will be the first Assassin's Creed game to take place in feudal Japan, specifically the Sengoku era. And no, it is not who you the main protagonists, or one of them, will not be a native Japanese person, but instead will be Yasuke. For those of you who are not historically inclined to be in mind of this kind of stuff, Yasuke was a Jesuit slave who was brought over to Japan and basically became a retainer for Oda Nobunaga. If you don't know who that is, go look him up. Nobunaga, because at the time they had never seen a black person. In fact, according to several stories, Oda Nobunaga actually tried to have Yasuke's skin cleaned off because they thought they just put powdered coal on him or something, but was amazed to see someone that dark. And also, he was very tall. Keep in mind, he was about 6'2", 6'3", about your average NBA basketball player, and the average median height for an average Japanese person back then was about 5'5", so he stood out. Now, a lot of people are saying that he was a samurai, and a lot of people saying no, he was just a retainer. Now, there is a video done by a very good YouTuber that I know called Metatron. He is an Italian historian who does his due diligence when it comes to historical stuff. Now, and for this particular thing, he actually digs deep into the Yasuke story. And he says that while he was a retainer is not the reason why people are getting mad over this is because they're saying that Yasuke was a samurai. He was not a samurai. He was a retainer for Oda Nobunaga, and not to say that he was a glorified pet or anything like that. As a retainer, he had some status. He had some authority within the court of Oda Nobunaga. The problem was he was not a samurai. He was a bushi. Bushi just is a common catch-all term for means warrior. Now, all samurai were bushi, but not all bushi were samurai. And plus, according to the official documentations, the video is on there. You can look it up for the Metatron. Yasuke barely received any kind of formal samurai training because he was only in the country for a grand total of like 5 years, and only 18 months out of those 5 years he spent as Oda Nobunaga's retainer. And he never received any he did receive some combat training before he came to Japan, but he was never trained as a samurai, nor did he see any battle as an official samurai. He was never given a sword, he was never given armor because he was just too fucking big, and there was not enough time for him to have a proper armor because he was just so freaking big. Now, the big thing is that if he was a samurai, he would have died when Oda Nobunaga was betrayed and killed. Because samurai have this thing where if their lord dies, then they have to commit seppuku, or ritualistic suicide, because they failed their lord. And Yasuke actually did live beyond Oda Nobunaga. What actually happened to him is up for debate. But the reason people are upset is because, and I understand this, is because people have been calling for an Assassin's Creed game to take place in Japan. They've been calling for this for years. And the main protagonist is a black guy. Yeah. It doesn't make really much sense. Like, all right, in every Assassin's Creed game, anytime it took place in a particular region or a particular country, it's always someone who was native to that region. Ezio, my personal favorite protagonist of the Assassin's Creed game, was from Florence, hence his name, Ezio Auditore de Florencia, or Ezio Auditore out of Florence. He was Italian. Assassin's Creed 3, Connor, he was half white, half Native American, which the game took place in America. In America. Assassin's Creed Revolution took place during the French Revolution, and the main protagonist of the game was French. Assassin's Creed Origins, the two main leads were Egyptian. Assassin's Creed Odyssey, the main character was Spartan or Greek. Assassin's Creed Valhalla, the main hero, as far as I know, was of the Northmen or a Viking. So it kind of feels really out of place that the first Assassin's Creed game to take place in Japan is not headed up by a native Japanese person. Instead, by someone who only who only has the barest minimum of influence on Japanese history and culture. Like, he is more or less an oddity and not like a major figure in the history of Japan. Like, Oda Nobunaga is a far more important figure in Japanese history than Yasuke. So that's why people are upset. And I'm like, why couldn't you just make it a Japanese person? And moreover, I'm more upset by this because for two things. One, samurai were not assassins. Why didn't they just make the main character a shinobi, a ninja. They were tailor-made for that. Sure, the other dual protagonist is a woman, a female ninja, but still, the guy who was headlining this entire thing is a black guy in samurai armor, and samurai were not assassins. They killed people, they killed a lot of people, but they did it in their own honorable way, but they did not do it in the sneaky assassin way, like a ninja. And secondly, for those who don't know, in Assassin's Creed, it's all about blending in. It's all about sneaking up on your enemy, killing him, and then getting out without nobody noticing. So how can you sneakily kill somebody when you're a 6'2" black man in a country filled with, where everyone is about my size, which is 5'5", and Asian? How is that going to play out? I'm interested to see how that's going to play out. Like, my lord, he was assassinated. Can you describe the assassin? He was tall, taller than any man we have ever seen, and black like coal. We'll never find him. What do you think, Yasuke? Tall black man who is the only one we've ever seen? Like, I don't know. I can't tell you. I have no idea. So yeah, it's really, the whole thing is just kind of stupid. Just, they could have done better. They really could have done better. If they wanted to do a historical person from Japanese history during that time period, Miyamoto Musashi is right there. He's right there. Greatest samurai who ever lived. Badass dude who killed 100 samurai in a single battle by himself. Pioneer of the two-sword style technique. Guy who lived into his 60s, having duels with people. He was right there. How come he couldn't do that? I don't know. I don't really know the plot. That's the whole thing. They just make it a big deal that they put Yasuke in the game. I don't even know what the plot is. I don't understand how he can be an assassin and be and just, you know, do all the things an assassin in the games is supposed to do. I'm not sure how they're gonna pull this off. Like, if you look, how about this? If you want a game that plays like Assassin's Creed but in Japan, Ghost of Tsushima is right there. Ghost of Tsushima is a fantastic game that plays around with the history of Japan. It puts you in the shoes of a guy who's trying to help repel the second Mongol invasion of Japan. And it's a fantastic story with some great gameplay and some great voice acting, and it just is fantastic stuff. And it also doesn't hurt that in the Japanese dub of the game, the main lead is voiced by the same guy who voices Roronoa Zoro from One Piece. Yeah, you're playing as a samurai in Japan, voiced by the most badass swordsman in anime history. And even better, at one point in the early part of the game, you have to join forces with a group of bandits or pirates called the Straw Hats. I am not making this up. Yeah, that's true. Well, Black Flag was great. I didn't really care for Assassin's Creed 3 LPH, but Black Flag was universal. Everybody says Black Flag should have been the Assassin's Creed 3. It was a fantastic game. Like, it had some great mechanics, great characters, great story. And the main character was just so great. Funny that his grandson in Assassin's Creed 3 was just a boring plank of wood. So yeah, I have no idea what's going to happen with this new Assassin's Creed game, and the backlash is, and don't even go on Wikipedia for Yasuke, because Metatron talked about it, and he said that he has never seen so many people edit a single article in Wikipedia so much. Like, within 24 hours since this trailer dropped, the Wikipedia article changed no less than 50 times, and people were actually getting into fights in the Wikipedia article, changing and rewriting it because Yasuke was a samurai. No, he was a retainer. No, he was a samurai. You're just trying to erase history. No, you're trying to erase their history. It is some petty bullshit. I only talk about this because everybody knows I'm a history buff. I live for history. I enjoy watching history. One of the channels that I watch religiously is biographics. Anyone who has ever watched any random week of the Rift Downs knows that we always set aside time for me to talk about some historical stuff, and I love talking about history. So I wanted, when I'm talking about Yasuke not being a samurai, I'm not just saying this out of my ass. I'm saying I have to go to the real sources, and the sources all say that he was a retainer. He was a bushi, not a samurai. He was, and this is what the sources are telling us. He was a retainer for Oda Nobunaga. He did receive a sword, but he was considered a bushi, but he was not a samurai. That's just the truth of it. And folks who, and if people have a problem with it, then TS, this is history. History doesn't care if you don't like it. There's a lot of stuff in history that I don't like, but I have to learn it anyway because that's how I want to pass this stuff down to my nephews so they could know real history. So yeah, there's that. Damn, I went on a tangent right there. But still, that out of the way. Spent 30 minutes talking about this stuff. Let's get to what you're really here for. And it's this. Oh yes, yes indeedy. It's time once again. It's time to get on this shit. All right, let's pull it up. All right, time to get my Dragon Ball Z voice out. Last time on New World, the Battle of Castle Dracula began as the castle's defenders fought off the combined forces of the House Bathory retainers and the pirates of the Black Feather Pirates as they attempted to permit regicide. But just when it seemed like all hope was lost, Lucas Kane and the crew arrive. Can they turn the tide of battle? Or will they just be denying the inevitable? Time to find out in Chapter 16, the Battle of Castle Dracula, Part 2, Jinx versus the Fleet. The newly christened Terry Bogard blasted through the skies of the Empire, cracking the air as it broke the sound barrier. Onlookers of the ground would later describe it as a sleek black bird as it blazed overhead. Underneath the frame of the plane were two massive ether drive booster rockets cobbled together from both the remaining bits of lost tech and parts of the Howard to give the already accelerating plane a much needed boost to reach its destination. And at the controls sat one pink-haired Fae with an excited grin on her face as she held onto the controls of the ancient but still very advanced fighter. Jinx! You guys are okay! Dawn said over the headset that covered Jinx's ears. Of course we are, Jinx. Takes more than that to beat our crew, that's for true. Lucas and the others are with you? Jinx looked back behind her. The rest of the crew were strapped in their seats, two on each side of the cabin. Their bodies jerked and shook from the excessive velocity. Lucas himself was groaning as he clutched his stomach. With me is very subjective right now. Humans were not meant to fly this fast, he groaned. Wait, you guys aren't in the Howard? Nope, we had to leave them behind. We're in a relic from your time. Long story. She pressed some buttons as they sped along their course. So how goes the fight? The walls have been breached, answered Akira. The cabin went silent after hearing that bit of news. Surely they had hoped the battle would be faring a bit better for them. They were not ready to hear that the wall had been bypassed. We fought them off as best as we could, but they hit us hard. Swarmed us pretty bad. We got intruders by the hundreds in the castle, getting word from all forces. It's like a war zone down here. Lucas quietly absorbed the report, trying to wrap his head around the enormity of the battle. Where you guys headed? He yelled out. A safe room. The throne room is unsafe with the slarg heads on the grounds. The Emperor and the Prince are secure for now, but even that's not for sure. Damn, exclaimed Lucas. The little bastard really set things up in his favor. You mean Lord Bathory? No, it's his nephew, Eric. He planned everything. Are you sure? Positive. He spilled everything. He's been planning this stuff for years and was going to pin it on his uncle. Can't explain right now, but you have to remember that Eric is the one behind all of it. Now, I didn't see that coming. We'll keep a lookout. We'll be on the lookout, Uncle Luke. How long before you guys get here? Jinx, he asked his pilot. About another 5 minutes. Can you guys hold out until then? More than enough. Just get ready for a fight. We're always ready for a fight. Oh, and Dawn? There was a small pause as the girl got back on the line. Yeah? I'm coming for my bullet. He naturally couldn't see her face, but he was pretty sure she was smiling and blushing at his comment. I know. I'll be waiting. Then the line went dead. Save for the roar of the engines, the cabin was silent as the ship raced towards its destination. Jinx glanced towards her leader. He said nothing as he tightened his harness to keep himself tied to the chair. She smirked as she turned back around and flipped a few more knobs, kicking the ship into a higher level of speed, jerking everyone back from the thrust. After a few minutes, the jet blasted past the ground station that signaled their entrance into castle airspace. Normally, it would take the vessel 15 minutes to reach the castle, but in this marvel of lost technology, they were there within visual range. They were within visual range of the floating structure quickly. All five leaned forward to get a better look and were dumbstruck by the sight of the fleet of fighters swarming over it like flies on a corpse. Even the hole in the wall was large enough that they could make out the edges. "Kumasochak," muttered Groose. "You took the words right out of my mouth, lad," added Thor. "By the goddess, I knew it would be bad, but this is beyond my calculations," said Reese. "I think we're all feeling that. Jinx, what are we looking at?" asked Lucas. The Fae pilot looked over at the scene approaching her. "I can see about 5 carriers. 2 of them have already landed." She checked the scanners on the control panel. "I think one of them is the Bathory airship." "So little Eric and his boys are already inside. Great." Lucas sighed. "How many bogies?" Jinx checked her scanners again. "About 40 or so. Slip fighters from the look of them." Groose chimed in. "Jinx, tosrekasha, nedabamina." "No can do, big guy. Those fighters won't let us land. Not in one piece, anyway." The ship buzzed past the battlefield, ships and all. The sonic boom shook the windows of the castle as it passed over, causing everyone in the open air to stop and look skyward, mostly due to them never having experienced a sonic boom before. Among those watching were Eric and his entourage, just as they exited their craft and were walking around the grounds without much of a care. Crow whistled in admiration. "Whew, that's a fast bugger." "Do you think it's him?" asked Alfonso. "It must be. It's the only explanation that makes sense." The young vampire eyed the skies as if cursing them for what was happening. "Willis, send word to the fighters. I want that ship blown out of the sky." "Are you certain of this, cousin? I mean, they're just a bunch of misfits," asked Willis. "I was able to plan around Lucas Kane's involvement to a certain degree. I did not plan for him to be here at the battle. We cannot afford him or his crew to land and join in. Who knows what might happen. So I want them out of the skies." "Understood." Back on the plane, Jinx glanced at her scanners, noting the various white dots converging on them. "Well, I got some good news. Looks like those fighters aren't attacking the castle anymore. But now they're on us." "Well, we're new to the party. Of course, we're the center of attention," joked Lucas. That's no problem. The Bogart's a damn sight faster than those draggers," spoke Thor. "Maybe, but not for long." Jinx pressed a few buttons as she read the gauges. "The boosters are damn near dry. Gonna have to ditch them. Was planning on doing it anyway. Those puppies were made for speed, not maneuverability." "So you're gonna dogfight them?" "Oh yeah. Only way we're landing is by getting through them first." She reached overhead and pulled a pair of yellow levers. Outside the Bogart, the twin boosters fell away from the fuselage and crashed the ground below. The main engine of the aircraft engaged and was now flying under its own power, followed behind by the fleet of fighters. Yeah. So what kind of firepower does this bad boy have? Probably powerful enough to make chicken meat out of those guys, huh? Jinx and Thor visibly groaned and swallowed hard after hearing what he said. Lucas looked between the two, noticing their visible unease. Jinx peered behind her to the dwarf. You want to tell Luke, Thor? The color drained from Lucas's face. What? Tell Luke what? Thor swallowed hard before he spoke. It's like this, my boy. We don't have any weapons. Lucas's face curled up as if someone punched him in the crotch. What? There are no weapons on this thing. Like at all. I think I got something stupid stuck in my ear. Did we just fly into a dogfight with 40 slip fighters, all armed to the teeth, and we don't have any Draken weapons? Well, none of them came on it. It's not built for dogfights. Why don't you just put some weapons on it then? Balance, man. We can't just slap some guns on the thing. It'll take our weight and the weight of our gear into account. Any more would have weighed us down and made us all the slower. We probably never would have made it as fast as we could if we weren't loaded for war. Besides, we didn't exactly plan for a dogfight. Ah, hells! Lucas shook his head, running his hands through his silver gray locks as if he was trying to rip them out of the roots. I did not need to hear this. Don't worry, Luke, called out Jinx. And why shouldn't I? We may not be able to outfight these guys, but we can damn sure outfly them. Outfly? Oh no. Oh no. I'm a Fae, Luke. No one outflies a Fae. Jinx kicked the plane into overdrive, speeding ahead of his pursuers. Once far enough, she pulled back on the controls, twisting the plane into a reverse spin and jetting back directly towards the fleet. The ships opened fire with their guns, showering the craft with bullets. The Browns bounced harmlessly off the hull, not even cracking the glass of the cockpit. Oh, gotta love that lightweight armor, she shouted as she pushed down the plane. She pushed the plane through the wave of fighters, all scattering as if not to fly into it. Jinx made a beeline for the castle as the fighters reformed and continued their pursuit. The dinging sound of rounds bouncing off the hull was unnerving as the crew held on for dear life. She banked up hard, a few fighters following suit. The Bogart twists into an aileron roll, something the fighters really have never seen before, let alone performed. So when they tried to replicate it, they were met with failure in the form of a high-speed impact with each other. The Bogart dipped back down as the fighters resumed the chase. Inside the cabin was absolute chaos as the crew hollered and bellowed expletives in Commons, Elvish, Dwarvish, and Sasquatch. Reese was handling it the best, but even she was looking a bit green. Thorgin's head bobbled around like it was on a string, all the while praying to the soul of his deceased gran for help. Groose was looking rather green about his hairy face. "Don't he muttered. "Turn your head away from me," roared the dwarf. Groose did so just in time as he emptied the rather large contents of his late breakfast on the floor. Lucas grimaced at the sight and yelled something at Jinx, but the Fae wasn't listening. Her focus was totally on flying this beast of a plane and handling the fighters that wanted them all dead. Her face was a mixture of intense concentration, manic insanity, and utter elation. Her hands were blurs as she flipped switches and pressed buttons, presumably regulating the power flow in the plane to improve performance. So fast was she that even Reese, who had phenomenal eyesight, had a hard time following her movements. For all intents and purposes, Jinx was in the zone. This was beating the Howard or that rickety two-engine flyer from her uncle's flight school. This was an old but state-of-the-art prototype, and she was going to push this old beast as hard and as fast as she possibly could in order to deal with the fighters behind them. She always thought she was good. Now she was being put to the test. The plane zoomed under the rocky underside of the plane, fighters struggling to keep pace but still sticking with her. She weaved around the stalactites with skill and precision of a hummingbird. The fighters fired at her as if they made their way around the forest of earth in mid-air. The Bogart shuddered a bit. It was still flying, but those rounds were taking their toll. Jinx cursed to herself as she pulled back on the lever beside her seat. A pair of retro rockets bringing the plane to a sudden halt. The wave of fighters zipped past her, lacking the power to stop and hover in place. Many of them were so distracted by the sudden maneuver that they crashed into each other and the underside of the underpropping of the castle. The rest flew past and began to turn around. The Fae smiled as she pushed the lever forward, cutting the end of the jets and booming forward. The chase resumed higher in the sky. The defenders on the wall and pretty much anyone with a view of outside were in awe of the brutal aerial ballet above them. Anyone could tell that the ancient aircraft lacked any sort of armament to fight back, but it didn't matter. It was faster and nimbler than the fighters, and the pilot was either a genius or a madman, or maybe both. "I've never seen flying like that," one of the guardsmen said in hushed amazement. "Yeah, it's amazing," muttered Valen, his arms itching from his wound. "It's a two-way dance. I've never seen a plane like that before, but it's a beast. Flies hard and fast. Arm must be pretty damn strong to take that many shots and not wiggle. And then there's the pilot. He knows how to fly that monster. How hard and how much to push, and skilled enough to handle those fighters without a single weapon to his name. Whoever he is, when this is over, I'm buying him a drink." "So you think he's got a chance?" The Bogart flew by hard, followed by the fighters and a hailstorm of bullets. Valen watches the battle progress with hard, questioning eyes. "No," he answered evenly. "Even with that beauty and even with the pilot, there's only so much he can do with a gunless boat. With a bit of fancier flying, he could take out a few more, but eventually they're going to get him." "He's going to get shot down?" "Not if we can help it." The vampire licked his dry lips as he began to smile. "How many of our wall cannons are still up?" One of the officers began to use his radio to communicate with the others around the wall. By the time the battle arched back towards their position, he gave the captain an answer. "About 48% are still active. The rest are under repairs or out of commission entirely." "Good enough. I want the remaining guns locked, loaded, and ready to fire." "Yes, sir." "Are we targeting the fighters?" "No." He hopped back over the edge of the wall and smirked. "We're targeting the black plane they're chasing." The officers and everyone around him were surprised by his order. "Sir, if he's as good as I think he is, he'll get what we're doing." The Bogart shuddered again. The sticks were getting harder to handle. Jinx was proud of her flying, but she was running out of tricks, and they weren't short on bullets. She didn't want to tell Lucas and the others that they were losing. She had one last trick up her sleeve, and she wasn't sure they could take out the rest of them. Boom! That was louder and harder than the last ones. Harder than simple machine guns. Boom! Another one. Someone else was shooting at them. Lucas could feel it too. "Those weren't machine guns," he yelled. "No, they weren't," she replied. She banked the Bogart hard enough to see where the cannon fire was coming from. She smiled as she watched the wall cannons unloading on them, but barely missing them. "I think I know who's shooting at us." "Who?" "No one important. Just the wall guard." The organ voiced everyone's shock at her amusement. "Why in the pink for hell are they shooting at us? They're trying to shoot us down!" "Trying, but not really," she answered happily, weaving and bobbing between the shells. "They're leading their shots. With our speed and my flying, they won't hit us, but they will hit the bastards behind us." She glanced down at her scanner. Little by little, the bogies behind them were dropping out, shot down by the vengeance of the wall guard. Normally, the cannons would have a hard time hitting them, but since they were so focused on shooting down the Bogart, they were easy pickings. After making a full circuit around the perimeter, the numbers were cut down by over half. "How many left?" yelled Lucas. "About 10. That tactic was unorthodox, but effective," admitted Reese. You got that right. When this is all over, I'm gonna give that captain a big kiss." "You know Valen's gay, right?" quipped Lucas. "I can try, right?" The Fae looked back at the scanner and thought to her last trick. She turned to the others and said, "Oh, things are gonna get nuts. You guys might want to hold on to something." "We're already holding on to stuff." "Well, hold on harder." With a grunt, she pulled back on the controls. The plane took a steep vertical climb. The fighters followed suit. The crew held onto their harnesses as the G-forces pushed them backward. The sticks in Jinx's hands shook as if they were having a seizure. There were sounds of countless beeps and alarms mixed with the whining of the engines as they pushed hard. They were pushed harder than they had ever been before. The crew wanted to say something, but were too busy trying to keep from passing out. Come on, follow the birdie. Jinx wrestled with the controls, her grip like iron. The plane trembled hard, feeling as if it was trying to rip itself apart, bolt by bolt. The blue of the sky got darker and darker as they climbed higher and higher. The cabin felt cooler as the temperature dropped lower and lower. There was a hard jerk. Something broke off the plane. She couldn't do this much longer. Her eyes drifted back to the scanner. 10 blips followed behind her, pushing themselves even harder than she was. Just what she wanted. Is there a point to this? Grunted out Lucas, the blood draining from his face. Yeah, she answered, looking at the frosted up windows. The best roller coaster ride you've never been on. The what? She flipped a switch and the engine shut off. All the beeping and alarms went silent, and the only sound was the howling wind could be heard. The plane hovered for a bit before beginning a slow descent back to Earth. Jinx maneuvered the plane into a nosedive, rushing past the still ascending fleet. The planes could only watch as their quarry fell from the skies. But they had another issue to deal with. Their engines froze and stalled. Soon they joined the Bogart in a free fall, but less controlled. Farther and farther they fell, the ground getting closer and closer. Lucas and the crew were shouting at their pilot to do something, but Jinx merely sat back and waited with unnerving calm. The seconds ticked by as the ground approached closer to view. Jinx! I hope this works. She calmly reached up and flipped the engine switch back on. It sputtered and coughed, but eventually kicked back on. Jinx pulled the plane from its dive and leveled out. Between their gasps of relief and cheers for her piloting skills, they heard the sound of nearby explosions as the last of the slip fighters crashed to the ground behind them. The wall guards saw it all and erupted into their own cheers. It was the cherry on top of a sundae of magnificent aerial skill, and now they had hope of winning this battle. Jinx, Jimmy Chucky Cha, called out Groose. "That is right, you know," added Thor. "You had me scared there for a bit. I think some of my hair's just turned gray there." I had complete faith in her skills," Reese said coolly. "Don't put up that brave front. You probably wet yourself. Give us a look-see. Let's see how wet those pants are." "What goes on inside my pants is none of your concern, half-man." Lucas exhaled out his exasperation. "Guys, not now!" He turned back to the pilot's seat. "Great flying, Jinx. You know your way around the plane." She laughed unsteadily at her kudos. Thanks. Little trick I picked up from my uncle. Couldn't dream of doing that with the Howard." "Well, we're still in the air, so that's something." "Yeah, for now." "What?" His question was answered as the plane rocked hard to the side. The engine gave a hard cough. "I think I pushed her a little too hard on that last one." Thorgan broke the silence that followed. "How bad, lass?" Jinx checked the gauges and monitors frantically. Engine's on her last legs. Fuel lines are either frozen or blown. Flaps aren't doing too good. She's shaking too badly. We're not going to stay in the air for too long." "What about the retros?" She pulled the lever, but didn't budge an inch. "Frozen." "But we can still land, right?" asked Lucas. "Yeah, we can land," she answered. "Just put crash in front of it and we'll be pretty accurate." "How long?" "A minute. 2, maybe." Silence again. There was no point in asking her what she could do. She had done more than enough to keep them alive and well. Now she was clearly using everything in her mind and power to keep them airborne. Lucas spoke. "Aim for the castle." Jinx turned to him in astonishment. "Say what?" If we crash on the ground, if we crash on the ground, even if we survive, we won't be any use to anyone in the castle. We won't be able to get back up there. If we're gonna crash, at least crash somewhere we can do some good. He looked at his crew. They all nodded in agreement with his decision. Can't say I disagree with you, Luke. She pulled the plane towards the castle. Her control over it was slipping by the second. So, anywhere special you want to crash? Aim for the front, the drawbridge. The main hallway should be wide enough that we won't make much of a mess there. Gotcha. She barely was able to aim the Bogart towards the entrance, despite the increased loss in altitude. I always wanted to visit Castle Dracula, just not by crashing into it. Okay, gang. Pucker your butts. This is gonna be ugly. Like, real ugly. Back on the wall, Captain Valen watched the plane falling towards the front and immediately understood what they were doing. Call the front gate. Tell them to lower the drawbridge. Sir, it's still on lockdown. Then cut the damn locks! Now! Orders were quickly shouted over the comms, and guards scrambled to the drawbridge to get it lowered. Like Valen suggested, they cut the locks and the chains that held it up to get it lowered faster. Luck was not kind to them today, as the drawbridge stopped halfway down. The guards tried to fix it, but the approaching plane put an end to any and all repair attempts as they cleared the area. The engines of the Bogart finally shut down, leaving it in a falling glide. Jinx fought to keep the vessel level and aimed for the half-open bridge. She was right. This was going to be very ugly. The bottom of the plane clipped the wall, shredding off pieces of stone and peeling off shreds of the hull. It hopped up, and the tail end collided with the wooden end of the bridge. The Bogart clumsily crashed through the inner wall and smashed into the hallway. The wingtips dug into either side of the hall, tearing doors off their hinges as it crashed. The tiled floor was torn to rubble as the nose dug deep into it. It skidded along the floor like a stone across a lake as it collided with the grand staircase, finally coming to a halt, but not before tipping forward and flopping backward violently. The Bogart, the most advanced plane in the Empire, was now a total wreck. Inside the cabin, the crew were scrambled to pop the interior. Their seatbelts could do nothing to keep them from being thrown about like rag dolls. Bruce was the first to his feet and began to help the others up, starting with Reese. Reese! Shoktak! I'm fine, Bruce, thank you. She pulled her slim body to her feet as she looked around the smoky cabin. Jinx! Lucas Kane, Thorgan! I'm here, woman. Thorgan pushed his chair off of him and stood up. If these were made by dwarves, they wouldn't have broken so easily. You call that easy? Lucas called out as he got to his feet. Are you okay, Lucas Kane? Fine. He spat out a mouthful of blood. I think I broke a tooth. He looked forward and saw Jinx's slumped over form. Damn, Jinx. He carefully made his way over to the pilot's seat. Jinx's body still buckled in, her head tilted forward. There was a rather nasty gash on her forehead. Ah, no, Jinx, come on, he called out. He tenderly leaned her back in the seat, touching her wound a bit. She groaned a bit as her eyes fluttered open. Luke? Good girl. He gave her a relieved smile. How you feeling, Ace? Head hurts. Seeing stars. No wonder. You got a bad nick on your head. She grunted as she touched her head. Damn. She tried to move, but her legs wouldn't function. She paled as she looked down. Luke, check my back. Nodding, he leaned her forward and peeked. He gave a sharp intake of air through his mouth as what he saw. One of Jinx's beautiful wings was crushed. Pieces of it twitched and jerked at the sight. Right one's crushed. God damn it, she cursed. Looks like I won't be helping you guys anytime soon. Nonsense. You got us here. You did great. You just rest up. We got this. He called out to Bruce. Hey, our gear okay back there? The Sasquatch rumbled through the debris and gave everything a look over. "Dorcha," he said, giving a thumbs up. "Good. As soon as everyone's patched up, we load up. Time to go hunting for these bastards." Elsewhere in the castle, Eric Bathory stood and listened as the castle was awash with sounds of battle. But it wasn't the gunfire or the battle cries that stopped him and his party. It was the crashing of the Bogart. He didn't know it was the Bogart exactly, but he didn't like the sound of it. "You okay, boss?" asked Crow. "That crash just now. Maybe they were shot out of the sky," said Willis with a sneaky smirk. Eric was not so confident at a conclusion. "Or they still yet live." "I've never seen you so uncertain, cousin," said Alfonso. "I have every right to be. This has been 10 years in the making, carefully crafted down to the last detail. The architect was exacting in his instructions, and all of it is threatened by the interference of a lowly freelancer. Perhaps I should have killed them at the first sign of their meddling." "Well, we can change that now, boss." He turned back to this group as they waited for his orders. "Indeed, it's time for them to be removed from the equation." With pure serenity, he removed his glasses and cleaned them with his shirt. "We will split up." He raised his hand to quiet their questions. "This is not a desperate tactic. I was planning on us splitting up from the start. Lucas Kane's crew and his presence merely accelerated that option. Staying together like that would only draw unwanted attention. It would benefit our goals for us to move separately. This castle is vast. We will need to cover more ground in order to find out where the royals are hidden." "Hidden? You sure about that, boss?" asked Glasses. "Yes." He replaced his spectacles over his eyes. "I believe the comatose royals are somewhere on the ground somewhere. The princess would have moved them somewhere in the castle not easily accessible by the general staff. There are places here that aren't on the map officially. I have marked them on your maps. It is more likely she's moved to one or more of these places. We won't be able to search them all as groups, but as individuals we are better odds." "Truly, the princess is a shrewd leader. More so than her brother," commented Alfonso. "Just makes her all the better for the conquest." Willis licked his fangs eagerly, the thought of what he would do to her having him tittering with excitement. "Truly, it's a pity to kill such a woman. But the future in the Empire and all. We will split up from here. Captain Crow, you will take up a position in the clock tower. It is the second highest point in the castle and perfect for spotting potential threats." "Gotcha, boss. Glasses, you're with me." "Can do, Captain." "Alfonso, take LaRue with you. You may need the extra muscle." "Understood, cousin." He nodded towards the giant, who responded in kind. "We will remain off comms. We do not want our communications intercepted. Only use them if and when you have found and killed the royals." "Cousin?" "Yes, Willis, you may have your way with the princess, but she still must die in the end." He rubbed his hands together in that fly-like manner and cackled. "Perfect. I'll send her to heaven before I send her to hell." "Good. You know the plan. Stick to it." With that, the conspirators each went their separate ways and began their search for the royal family. The side hatch of the Bogart flew off the hinges of the fuselage, landing a few yards away from the wreckage. Groose poked his hairy head out from the hole and looked around. Despite their rather loud entrance to the castle, they were totally alone in the hall, the sound of combat faint in the air. Groose returned into the cabin. "Got that too!" "That's what I was hoping for," said Lucas. "Well, it's better that we don't have an audience." "Ow!" Jinx was getting a large bandage wrapped around her head thanks to the meager medical skills of Reese Fold. Her seat was turned around, facing the rest of the cabin. A large wad of gauze was tied around her back, presumably on her damaged wing. "Don't tie it so tight." "I am sorry, medicine is not my field of expertise." Still a sight better than what I do," said Thorkin. "Yes, I'd imagine your first aid would involve spit and rags." "Keep it up, you harpy, and you'll find out firsthand." "Guys, hurting here," snapped the Fae, suddenly understanding why Lucas hated their bickering. "Well, the coast is clear, at least for now. You gonna be okay, Jinx?" The Fae picked up a small automatic handgun and loaded it. I may be hurt, but I can still put one between a pirate's eyes. You guys do what you gotta do. And make sure you bring Dawn back. She's good people. That's the plan. You stay safe, kid. You too. All of you. The crew gave her a few goodbyes as the foursome exited the wreck and into Castle Dracula. Each of them were loaded for war. Lucas had foregone his duster and sported a simple shirt with a gun holster that crisscrossed his chest. In his hand was Mr. Fisher. Thorgan with his shotgun and a bag full of bombs, ammo, and a few other nasty bits of melee weapons made for hurting people. Reese carried Whisper in her hand, and on her back the bitch cannon. She was grateful to the dwarf had made it so lightweight that someone like her could carry it easily. Groose only wore a pair of gloves that Jinx had bought him a while back. Hey, always wanted to be here. Just never thought I'd come here to be busting some heads, said Thor. Groose nodded and looked around and scratched his head. Kipa, hata koticha. You would think that, lad. So, do you have a plan, Lucas Kane? Asked Reese. Simple, he answered. We go hunting. Eric and the boys will be looking for the royals, but they'll probably split up to cover more ground. You sure, lad? That's what I do. So we'll do the same. Where do we start? Well, there are places in the castle that a lot of people don't know about. If I was a Landra, I'd move her and her father and her brother to somewhere like Olrox's quarters or something. Would be a smart move. So we each take a part of the castle and start our search. Stay off comms. Those chocos might be listening in. But if you take one out, let everyone know. Deal? They all nodded. Good. I'll head to the throne room and try to retrace their steps. Maybe find this safe room that Akira mentioned. I'll look for a high spot. I'll be able to see more of the grounds from there, announced Reese. I'll get to be hunting on my own way. I'll get to the hunting on my own. Groose, lad, you in? Che. Rayo. Time to put boots in asses. Thor walked off to look for his path. Groose, Reese called out quietly. She looked down at him and he looked down at her and she gave a simple sentence. Watch over him. He glanced between her and the dwarf and nodded. Che. All right, people, you know who we're after, so stop him if you can. And one more thing. Dawn. Make sure she gets out of this okay. The quartet shared one last look between each other before setting off in different directions. Now the battle would become more intense. And so ends this chapter of New World. Heroes have made it to Castle Dracula. A little worse for wear. Yep, that's right. So Han Solo, Maverick, and all the Ace Combat guys would be proud of her. Yep. Fine chapter indeed. Thank you. Yeah. In case you were curious, as I was reading this, I was listening to "Shoot to Thrill" by AC/DC. So, yeah, that's the soundtrack for that entire dogfight. "Shoot to Thrill." Yep. I'm a big AC/DC fan myself. Yeah. Shame that they couldn't keep the Howard. The shame they couldn't keep the Terry Bogard. Terry Bogard was a great plane. Worthy of the name. Worthy of the name. Sabotage is good too. I'm gonna have to definitely listen to Sabotage. That's a great song. Yep. Get a quick chug of water. And figure out who has been text messaging me this entire time, interrupting my reading. Oh, that was a friend. Oh yeah, and some dividend payments, which I'm getting. Yep. Yeah, so that's a nice little chunk of change from my dividend investments. So far, I've invested nearly $1,000 in dividend investments. Get about $20 a month from dividends alone. I just buy them and let them start accruing. And then when I get more, I just buy more stocks so I can get more dividends and more payments per month. Good way of keeping you, for somebody like me who doesn't make a lot of money, it's a good way of making passive income. Dividend investments. Try it out. Oh, yeah. All right. And now enough of this. It's time to get on to some one-on-one fights. And with that, we're going to go to chapter 17. The Battle of Castle Dracula, Part 3. Thorgan versus Alfonso. Princess Elandra watched as her guardian Akira attempted to re-establish communication with his uncle. They had all heard the crash, even from as far away as the entrance hall. It unsettled all of them, and they stopped to try to make contact with them. So far, he was unsuccessful. She glanced over at Dawn. Her face was muted as her eyes watched the lichen struggle to get a line to her friends. If she was worried, she wasn't showing it. Nothing, said Akira at last. Either they can't answer or they won't. Well, that wouldn't mean that they are dead exactly, spoke Elandra. She looked over at Dawn. Don't worry, my dear. I'm sure Lucas and his bunch will be just fine. She has a point. Uncle Luke and his crew are pretty damn tough. If you say so, she answered, trying to convince herself that they were okay. So we're stalling long enough. Let's get moving. Akira motioned for the members of the Dragon's Teeth to move ahead. No sooner had they begun to move than a group of pirates cut around the corner. Both sides froze up as they sized each other up. Upon seeing the princess and Dawn, they realized what they had in their grasp. Oi! It's the princess and the girlie! Get 'em! Akira didn't need to understand Pick to understand what they were saying. The party ducked on either side of the hall, Elandra and Akira on one side, Dawn and her protectors on the other. Gunfire filled the air as both sides unloaded on each other. Akira pulled out his personal firearm, a Mark IV scattergun, and fired on his foes. Elandra hunkered down near his waist. Dawn squatted down as the soldiers formed up around her and laid down their own fire. Over the noise, she could hear the howling and laughter of the pirates. She didn't want to know what they had planned for her, even if they got their dirty hands upon her. She decided to venture a look of cover. Just as her luck would have it, she looked in just in time to see a decent-sized grenade being lobbed at him. Fire in the hole! Screamed one of the soldiers. She dashed forward, somehow avoiding being shot in the process, and gave a hard kick back gave it a hard kick back towards the aggressors. Before it even landed on the ground, it exploded. The shockwave blew the party backwards, barely missing the rain of rubble that came down as a result. Dawn was dazed for a minute before she found her bearings and struggled to her feet, coughing up dust. Are you okay, ma'am? Said one of the soldiers as he helped her to her feet. Yeah, I'm fine. She looked over around her. All 5 of her protectors were still alive. She would have breathed a sigh of relief if it was something to be relieved over. She looked ahead of her. The passage was totally blocked off with rubble. There was no way to get around from there. Damnable bastards, snapped the soldier. Using that kind of munition here? That bad? Very. If you hadn't kicked it, we'd be under a mess right now. Looking around, she looked around again. There were 2 people missing, and there was only one place it could be. Highness! Akira! She yelled as she got to the wall, next to the wall. On the other side, Elandra was being slightly crushed by the protective form of Akira as he pressed her against the side wall. As the dust settled, he pulled himself away and looked around the immediate area. He, of course, noticed the obstruction caused by the grenade. He looked back at the pirates. Most of them were dead, others groaning in agony. You okay? Elandra gave herself a mental diagnostic for a moment. I seem to be. My dress has seen better. By the makers, you're hurt! There was a small stream of blood running down his forehead. It was only as his adrenaline began to wear off that he felt the small itch of pain from the sight. She touched his head, but he didn't even flinch. I'm fine, he answered. It's what you pay me for. Glad to see I'm getting my money's worth. He allowed himself a smile as he wandered about the mess, taking the stock of the wreckage. It was only then he noticed that they were light 6 people. Elandra was about to call out to them when she heard Dawn's voice behind the wall. Highness! Akira, please answer me! The pair scrambled over to the wall. Dawn! We're here, both of us, the princess replied. Thank goodness. Are you alone? Is the squad still with you? Said Akira. The soldier answered. We're here, sir. Riled, but in one piece. Good on you. How's it looking on your side? Not good, sir. Totally blocked off on our end. Same here. Although our dear guests are in any condition to try to stop us at the moment. Good, sir. Should we start digging? Negative on that. Make for the teleporter. We waste time we don't have trying to rendezvous. Make for the teleporter and the safe room. Are you sure, sir? What about the princess? Let me worry about the brat. Your job is to protect that young lady, understood? Yes, sir. Dawn spoke up. Are you sure this is a good idea? Akira knows what he's doing, darling, said Elandra. Just follow those gentlemen and you'll be fine. We'll see each other again before long. I understand. You guys just be careful, okay? They're gunning for you as well as me. Thanks. Stay safe, Dawn. The squad formed up around Dawn and motioned for her to follow them. Staying low, the young woman stuck close to her protectors as they fast walked down the hallway and towards the alternate route to the next functioning teleporter. Do you think she's going to be okay? The royal asked her guardian. Can't say. But she's smart and she's tougher than she looks. As long as they don't take too many risks, you'll be safe. At least until Uncle Luke finds her. He will. He's determined like that. Now then, lead the way, puppy. Maybe it was because of the stress of the situation, or he was too focused on the task at hand. For whatever reason, Akira didn't chastise or snarl distastefully at her. He simply ignored it. And it worried her. A squadron of guardsmen raced down the corridor near the royal library, screaming orders at each other as they passed. This scene played out all over the castle as smaller skirmishes had broken out all over. Many of them had just finished up one fight only to be called to another in another part of the castle. But in spite of the mounting casualties, injuries, and the ever-increasing fatigue, the castle guards showed their grit as they soldiered on, fighting one engagement after another. It was thanks to these factors at play, no one noticed the dwarf and the Sasquatch quietly walking around the back hallways. They didn't expect them to fight them with any of the guardsmen, but with the stress and the chaos of the battle, it would be hard to explain why such an odd pairing were there. Dorian, koskated mata, asked Groose. Thor peeked around the corner and saw no one. Aye, lad, it's clear. The duo carefully strolled out, eyes checking subtle movements of every shadow around them. It had been 20 minutes since they separated from the others. Thor and Groose were careful not to overlap the area that the others had occupied, and thus found themselves in this area of the castle. They had barely avoided a gunfight here and there, watching them play out from a hidden distance. Thor attempted to join in, but Thor was tempted to join in, but he had his own battles to fight, and he needed to save his ammunition for them. Didn't expect our hunters to take us, eh, old boy? Sure. Good. Let us lead the last of the scraps. The pair walked into the nearest area of the library, the royal study. The study was a massive 10-story long circular room with doors around the circumference. This was a place reserved for schooling the staff and the younger members of the royal family, hence the proximity to the even larger library. They were on the 8th floor, giving them a marvelous view of the area. The sun shone in from the domed room, basking the light in a gentle glow. The air was thick with the scent of books and ink, giving the feel of a school on a summer afternoon. Dwarf blood lit a flame upon seeing the visage before him. He couldn't help but admire the good design and architectural skills, and this was something right up his alley. Thankfully, this was the first place they had seen that hadn't been touched by the battle. Ah, by me grandpa's beard, look at this beauty, Groose, he said with the enthusiasm of a child in a toy store. I'd love to shake the hand of the bastard who designed this one right here. Groose just scratched his head. Dosatate chikaka. Thorgan gave him a sour look. You just got no sense of taste for the architecture. Kamako chica. Thorgan balled his fist and extended his thumb. Away with you, you bastard. Now let's start. he was cut off by the sudden sound of a door opening, which was a few yards away from them. Out from the door walked Alfonso, carrying a small black case and looking over the area in his usual snobbish way. The noble and Thor almost immediately locked eyes. Thorgan smiled. Alfonso sneered in a way as someone would if they smelled something foul in the air. "I thought I heard voices," he said, adjusting his monocle. "It seems that I was worried for nothing." "Oh, well, looky here, Groose, old boy. It's one of the Bathory boys. And here I thought we'd be hunting for another hour before finding one." He cocked his shotgun. "So, you here to get some learning done? Maybe figured out why your little uprising is gonna fail?" Alfonso turned away from them and returned to his view to the study. "If you must know, I was in the process of searching for the royal family, as I assume you are too. But alas, our search has turned up nothing. It is a crying shame. And so I must continue my search, if you will excuse me." He turned on his heel and started to walk away. "Oh, where do you think you're going, boyo? The only thing that you're going to be finding is me boot up your arse. And look, it's already here, right here for you." The vampire gave an audible sigh. "Mr. Riffall, was it? It's nothing short of a miracle that you and your crew survived the crash. You should be grateful for your life. I offer you a chance. Forget you saw me, forget this foolishness. Run, hide, and maybe my cousin will give you some leeway depending on the mood. Take that hairy thing next to you, find a place in the castle, and just let this play out as it should." Oh, you'd like that, wouldn't you, you stuffed shirt? But unfortunately, I still plan on feeding you your guts. But why? Out of some misplaced sense of patriotism? Patriotism? I wouldn't go that far. Sure, I like the royals well enough to defend them, but there's more to it than that. It has to do with a girl named Dawn. His face twisted up in a questioning glare. "The girl from the unit?" "Aye, have you met her? Lovely girl, smart as a whip. And she happens to think I'm very good looking for a dwarf. Mind you, she hasn't seen very many dwarves, but I appreciate the sentiment." His usual defiant cheerfulness gave way to dangerous seriousness. "If you think for 1 second that I can sit back and let your bastards use and kill her, then you're not as smart as you think. In fact, I think you're a bunch of bloody morons." "Such worthless sentiment," he muttered. "Do you honestly think you could beat me in physical combat, dwarf?" "Oh, I could beat you. But Groose here? He'd peel your skin like a banana and grind your bones into some powder, and that's just for starters." The giant ape cracked his knuckles and stood forward, attempting to all but ready to commit violence upon the vampire. "I will admit he is intimidating," he said, a bit unnerving by the looming presence of Groose. "And a match between us would not favor me." "Glad you think so. Now how about surrendering like a good little snob?" Alfonso smiled. Fortunately for me, I just happen to have someone who is a bit far better match for your dear Groose here. He snapped his fingers and the wall behind him exploded. From the hole emerged the titan of a pirate named LaRue. As usual, he said nothing, and as he looked over the scene and walked over by Alfonso's side. "I take it you gentlemen are familiar with LaRue, Captain Crow's strongest crew member. What he lacks in conversational skills, he more than makes up for in pure brute strength. Strong enough to give your friend Groose here a good run for his money." Thorgan had heard about this guy from Lucas upon his return from Rum's Row. He specifically said he did not ever want to fight this guy, and you could see why. The way he pounded through that wall showed that Alfonso's boasts were not just for show. He was really that strong, maybe even stronger. But he didn't let that discourage him one bit. "Hey, looks like you got yourself a dance partner there, Groose. Do you think he can handle that tall drink of bourbon?" "Gee," he answered. "This kuma motacha." I was hoping you'd say that. Go on and introduce yourself to him. And do be kind about it." The vampire spoke. "LaRue, kill him, and bring me his skin. It will make a fine jacket." The two titans walked forward, eyes locked upon each other. Alfonso Alfonso and Thorgan could have taken this opportunity to attack one another, but were transfixed by the sight before them. With each step, the tension in the air grew denser. In terms of pure physical strength, the two were the strongest in the whole castle, and they were about to face off in the ultimate test of strength. They stopped when they were a few inches away from each other. Groose was the larger of the two, but only barely as he looked down at the human. They breathed deep the stench of breath coming off each other and just waited. They wanted to see which of them would blink first. Waited for a moment of weakness or hesitation. That moment never came. They were both eager and ready for the bout to begin. Groose cocked his arm back and landed late into LaRue with the mother of all haymakers. The blow was so strong it echoed throughout the study, rattling the glass dome above their heads. LaRue's head snapped back, but he stood his ground, his feet not moving a single inch. He looked back at Groose, a small trickle of blood coming from his mouth. He then straightened himself back up and stared at him, fear utterly absent from his irises. LaRue struck back, slamming him with the same blow he had received moments before, with the same terrifying power. Groose's head cracked backwards, but like his foe before him, he didn't move at all. Tasting his own blood, he splat out a bloody wad of saliva before coming back up. Sika! Suddenly, he let out a bellowing roar as he tackled the enhanced human. The pair drove past Alfonso and crashed through a wall and out of sight. The only sounds audible were Groose cursing in his native tongue, fists landing on flesh, and furniture being obliterated in the scuffle. "Oh, they seem to be having their fun," commented Grogan. "Indeed. A pity neither of us will have the opportunity to witness the outcome," added Alfonso. "So, I take it you're ready to throw down?" "Yes, in so much that this won't be a throwdown, as you put it. In fact, you're barely a threat as is." "We'll see how much of a threat I am." Thorgan grinned as he readied his trusty shotgun. "Let's." The noble shoved his hand into the case with gusto. Thorgan could hear the sounds of snapping metal and electrical humming coming from it. "Ah, getting your gun, I see. Just letting you know, I'm wearing a bit of body under me shirt. Gonna need a very big caliber to get through it." "I am warned, and trust me, I have the largest caliber available." He rather dramatically pulled his hand out of the case and revealed his weapon of choice, a rather large-sized gauntlet, silver in color, wrapped around his arm up to the elbow. Thor didn't know what to make of it. Did he plan on fighting him in fisticuffs? It didn't matter to him either way, but still, he hadn't seen anything like that before in his life. "What in the seven hells is that supposed to be?" "Ah, of course, you've never seen this before. My apologies. Then please, allow me to enlighten you." The strange metal glove began to glow with a low hum, and the seams glowed with a yellow light. Then, on top of the part of the hand, a slot opened up, revealing a white, glowing orb. Alfonso extended his arm towards Thor as the humming became louder. "Yeah, you're gonna point me to A loud crackle of lightning boomed in the room as an arc of electricity shot across the distance between them and hit the dwarf square in the chest. Thor screamed in surprise and agony as he was thrown back several feet into a wall. The stone cracked a bit from the impact and his body dropped to the ground hard. Thorgan felt his whole body tingle and shake as if being struck by a from being struck by a lightning bolt. He looked down. His shirt was burnt black, a large hole in the middle of it. Beneath was his homemade vest, smoking so hard he almost thought it would set itself on blaze. Alfonso smiled. That is a remarkably well-constructed vest. Normally a bolt that size would have burnt a hole straight through you. My compliments on your survival." Thor pulled himself to his feet, shaking off the numbing sensation that took over his body. "What? How?" he gasped as he picked up his shotgun. "Oh, you must be in quite a bit of pain. Then please, accept this gentle breeze to ease your burns." He raised his hand again. This time, the air itself seemed to swirl around his arm like a vortex. It did this until a horizontal funnel cloud formed in front of him. With a jerk of his wrist, the wind tunnel shot forward and collided with the dwarf. The wall behind him gave way as he was blown into a side study room. He instinctively curled into a ball to protect himself as best he could from the maelstrom of wood and rock. When the wind died down, he found himself half buried under a pile of splintered wood. Finally finding his senses, he threw off some of the debris and got to his feet, a bit faster than before. Alfonso appeared in the new entrance to the room. Oh, what a mess, but this is what happens when you unleash a tornado indoors. He looked Thor over again. Ah, yet you live. Very impressive. But it seems you didn't care much for the breeze. My mistake. You'll need something a bit more effective for your wound. How about some nice, cool ice? Again, his hand came up, but this time, the bite of winter cold surrounded him. Around the tip of his fingers formed small balls of ice. He flicked a finger. An ice ball shot past him, impaling itself in the wall behind him. Quickly grasping what was coming, Thorin snapped to his feet and made a quick dash for the door. Alfonso unleashed a wave of icy bullets at him. Thor slammed the door against him and into the next room. The frightening sound of thunder followed, a bolt striking him just behind him. He all but flew backwards into the main corridor and took cover behind a pillar. His side was killing him. It probably had cracked ribs, and his chest, while in one piece, was making breathing hard. Do not run too far, my friend. Alfonso strode calmly after him, no sense of hurry or urgency in his movements. I still worry for your wounds. He exasperated from his taunting, he snapped around the corner and popped off a round of shot from his shotgun. The vampire twisted his hand upwards, creating a wall of wind between himself and the projectiles. He folded the wind into his palm and grasped the pellets. Are these yours? Are you some kind of wizard? He asked, completely at a loss for what he was doing. The noble gave an amused chuckle as he dropped the buckshot. Hardly. I am no Yrule, but I understand your confusion, and I would hate for you to die stupid. So I will offer you an explanation, but first, a question. Do you know what causes weather? Thor ducked behind a pillar. Weather? Yes. It's actually quite simple, really. Weather, as we know it, is merely the result of temperature changes and differentials in air pressure. Add differences in air. Add bits of air pressure and wind, and you've got weather. There's actually more to it than that, but that is the basics of it. And what the hell does that have to do with anything? It has everything to do with this. He held up the metal glove. This beauty is the Nimbus glove. Never heard of it. I should say not. This little marvel is a brainchild of an elven scientist from over 200 years ago. He was a meteorologist, a rather brilliant one. He dreamed of creating a device that could not only accurately predict weather patterns, but control them as well. A system that could alter weather patterns on a whim. Droughts could be ended with a sudden rainstorm. Flooding could dry up with a sunny day. Thunderstorms dispelled with a gesture. Total, controllable weather. Marvelous, isn't it? Me heart's all a-flutter, he snapped. So I'm guessing he made that fancy glove of yours. Well, not exactly. He actually created this. He pointed to the white orb on the back. This is the Nimbus Eye. It makes the entire system work. The glove itself was created by his assistant, who saw the more practical applications for the eye. Practical. In commons as a weapon, and a powerful weapon, as you've seen. So what's wrong with it? I never heard of it before today. Why wasn't it mass-produced? That's the thing. There is nothing wrong with it. You're kidding me. I'm not. The glove worked exactly as it should, perhaps too well. Not only can this glove control weather across an area as large as a city, but it can also do it as an area as small as a room. Local weather control. The very forces of nature, literally in the palm of your hand. and the military rightfully thought it would be dangerous if it fell into the hands of one of our nation's enemies, like those thumpers in the Protectorate, or those psychopaths down south in the RUS. It was far too powerful to be destroyed, but far too dangerous to be mass-produced, so it was simply locked away in a secret military compound for the last 2 centuries. How'd you get a hold of it? You stole it? When you're a noble, there is very little that you can't get. Alfonso eyed his weapon with an almost lecturous stare. I have studied this glove since I was a child. I longed to wear it, to hold its power in my hands. And now, that dream is a reality. I'm so proud of you. You probably feel like a bloody god. I am no god, dwarf, but if this is what being a god feels like, it certainly does feel good. Now, come, dwarf. Let us see what this lovely thing can really do. With renewed vigor, he aimed the glove towards Thorgin's position. With cooling fans and heaters in the glove, I can create a mini thunderclouds in my hand. As he talked, a few small clouds formed around his fingers. The eye gives the clouds off an opposite charge, and lightning is created. And thanks to the circuits in the fingertips, I can aim the lightning in any direction I want. He launched another bolt at Thor, the pillar taking most of the strike. He covered his eyes to keep the dust out. Next, adjust the air currents with a little heat, and voila! Instant tornado! A twister fired ahead of him, colliding with the pillar. Thor left out of the way before the winds blew him well beyond his control. There's quite a bit of moisture in the air, so a little cold air. Hailstorm! The cold came back, and so did the hail. Thorgin caught a shot in the side. It didn't pierce his skin, but it certainly hurt. Hurt enough that he dropped his weapon as he rolled to his side. He crawled for his gun, but a well-placed lightning bolt struck, turning his favorite weapon into so much burnt-out slag. Oh, did you need that? I'm so sorry. I guess that means this fight is over. You think so? He said to the vampire as he looked up at the vampire. Yes, you've lost your favorite weapon while I remain in control. Then why don't you just end it and be done with it? Why? Because I'm testing out this glove more. Thor gave a grim chuckle. Keeping me around as a rabbit, eh? Yeah, it's gonna be a bad mistake on your part, you punker. Oh? Alfonso's arrogance blinded him to the fact that Thor had snuck his hand into his pack. Thus, he was quite surprised when the dwarf threw a handful of gray balls at his foe. Before he could even call out another bolt or a wind shield to protect him, the balls detonated into a blinding flash of light. While the vampire was blinded temporarily, Thor jumped to his feet and made a break for it. True enough, you took out my favorite weapon, but as it wasn't my only weapon. Alfonso regained his sight just in time to see the grenade flying straight at him at an arc. This time he was quicker to respond than the last, blowing the explosive up with a bolt. Alfonso sneered. Explosives, is it? Thorgin cackled like a madman as he rummaged around his pack for more bombs. Oh, aye. Don't get me wrong, I love things that go bang. But I love making things that go boom. And I've got a nice big bag of them right here, and I plan to shove them all up in your uptight arse. I didn't expect you to have a backup. He looked across the room and caught sight of his head. But you only hold so many bombs in that backpack of yours. You will run out eventually, while myself, as long as I have air, I have unlimited ammunition. Hey, good point. He pulled out a handful of special bombs. Then I'd have to kill you before that happens. Good luck. The noble created a cyclone in midair and jumped into it. Floating in the air, he held down to the high ground and launched a twister at him. Thorgin ran as fast as his little legs could carry him, while throwing a few more bombs. Alfonso pushed them down to the lower floors as they exploded away from him. He landed closer to Thor, but the dwarf took the risk and leapt to the floor below, across from his old position. Alfonso fired a bolt, nearly hitting the dwarf as he landed. He rolled along the floor and came to a stop on his stomach. He saw the vampire readying another lightning bolt. Gotcha! He pulled out a detonator and pressed it. Alfonso heard rapping beeping of a bomb and pulled up a windshield before it blew up. He staggered backwards, unharmed but rattled. He threw another twister, but Thor dodged it. Yeah, I think I figured out your little toy.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, it's got a nice big weakness. Alfonso felt personally insulted by the comment.
Your attempts at mind games won't get you a win in this battle. I've studied this glove for years. I've researched everything from its operation to its maintenance. There's no way you could have figured out something about this glove that I don't know about.
Oh, but it's no game, said a confident Thor. You see, here's your weakness. A little glove there of theirs can't do two kinds of weather attacks at the same time. First notice it when you took to the air. You could have rained lightning down like bloody Zeus from Mountain Olympus, but you didn't. You threw a twister at me. Based on what you said earlier, different weather effects need different levels of hot and cold air to work. Can't make lightning when you're throwing out tornadoes. Am I right, boyo? Alfonso was livid. Not just because Thorgan was right, but because he didn't notice it himself at first. His nobility felt shattered and tainted. This low-born dwarf dares to not only challenge him, but also make a mockery of his understanding of the weapon he spent his life studying.
You maggot!
He roared, fighting off another bolt. His rage made him miss his target. Thorgan laughed as he tossed another bomb. It exploded in a cloud of gray powder that caught him in the face, choking him. Not all me bombs blow up, he yelled as he ran off. He was in good spirits now. He not only figured out a flaw in that damnable weapon, but now his foe was angered and thus fighting sloppy. It wasn't much of an advantage, but he had to take what he could get. And if he played his cards right, he could take this guy out. Clearing his throat from the powder, Alfonso took off after the dwarf, with the literal wind at his back. Chasing him out of the study and into the hallway, he threw another bolt. It clipped the edge of a wall, sending debris in Thor's path. He tripped, sliding along the ground, causing him to lose his pack.
Ah, you bastard!
He cursed, holding his leg.
You got me leg!
A satisfied smirk washed over the vampire's face.
It looks like the weakness you found didn't help you much.
I suppose not. He sauntered over to the dwarf like a cat.
Any last words?
Yeah. 2 to be exact.
Food ya!
Thor suddenly twisted his body around and threw a grenade at him. Alfonso quickly waved his hand in front of him, but nothing happened. At least nothing he could see. The grenade sailed past him and landed like a rock. Thor was left wondering what had happened as he saw that he didn't go off.
There was no dud?
I'd assume not, he answered smugly. I simply lowered the ambient temperature around me minus 30 degrees. It's the same temperature as one of the northern territories of the POV. From what I understand it's so cold that if you spat, the saliva would freeze before it hit the ground. You froze the fuse. Smart.
True.
Now I wonder what would happen if I exposed you to such temperatures. He thrusted his hand forward, creating a wave of cold air after him. Thor scrambled to his feet and ran ahead of the oncoming front, picking up his bag, and he rounded the corner. The ground froze and cracked from the extreme chill. Wherever he was headed, he didn't make it far as the floor gave way under him, sending him crashing to the floor below. Thor groaned in pain as he hit the stone floor, but he was able to ignore it as Alfonso looked down at him from above. He reached into his bag and tossed a few more bombs upward. They froze as they neared the vampire. He ran off with Alfonso hot on his heels. He blindly threw more bombs. Alfonso smirked as he froze them in midair.
The definition of insanity is trying the same thing twice and expecting a different result.
It can't hurt to try, he yelled back, throwing more bombs, getting the same results. He made a note of where they dropped and fumbled in his pack for another.
This is getting pathetic.
I've negated your only real offense. It is hopeless. Not hopeless until you run out of hope, he answered back with a smile. And I've got a bag full of hope right here. He tossed out another bomb and ducked. Alfonso waved his hand. So stupid. His comment was stopped as the bomb blew up earlier than he expected. The shockwave threw him hard several feet into a wall. He coughed up a large wad of blood, his gloveless arm hanging limply to his side. His ears rang horribly. He was hurt. Thorgan raised his head and smirked, yelling something in Dwarvish, probably a victory cry. "How does that taste, you shirt puffer?" "How?" he groaned. Thor got to his feet and dusted himself off. "Did you really think me throwing those bombs earlier was me being desperate? Nah, I was gauging your field." Alfonso's eyes widened with realization. "You were?" "Aye. We're seeing how far that cold field of yours reached. Throwing those bombs was a good way to measure it. Took me a while to get it down. So I just shortened the fuse on that last one so it blew up before it reached the field. Knew it wouldn't kill you, but it was gonna hurt like a bastard." "Yes," he hissed as he slowly stood back up. "You did hurt me. And now I will just have to hurt you back." "Uh-oh." Thor jutted around a corner, taking cover from an incoming bolt. "Sounds to me someone isn't used to getting knocked on his arse. Why don't you leave the fighting to the real warriors, like the guardsmen or the mates?" "Joke all you want." He spat out a tooth. "I'm going to kill you, dwarf. Then I'll hunt down the rest of your merry little band and kill them too. Maybe I'll start with that elven whore." Thor slowly, hatefully looked around the corner and glared at Alfonso. For the first time in a long time, Thorgan Riftfall was rightfully and truly pissed. "Now why'd you have to go and say a thing like that, boyo?" he said, his normal indignant tone replaced by one of absolute malice. "I was just gonna beat you up, let the royals deal with you. But now, since you insulted Reese Fold, I've got no choice now. I'm gonna kill you dead, and it's gonna hurt. I'd like to see you try." He fired another bolt, this time missing again. Hurting his arm had affected his aim just enough for Thor's liking. He sprinted off, leaving a bomb where he stood. The blast covering his departure as he exited, but even injured, Alfonso could still run him down easily. He ran for a while until he came to a large circular room. It didn't seem like much, a few broken tables, some shattered windows, dinnerware scattered about the floor, and something that made his face light up. A suit of armor, with a large, round shield. Just what he was looking for. He checked his bag. Only 4 bombs left. It would have to do for what he planned. "You'll do nicely, my friend." He picked up the shield and examined it. "Now let's hope he's still mad." The door of the room blew to pieces, and the low muttering of the noble could be heard. "Oh yeah, he's still mad." As he entered, he threw a bolt at Thor. The dwarf hid behind the shield, but was pushed back into the wall of the room, breaking a rather old clock with his back. He fired again, pinning him down against the stone. He waited for a moment, the moment between attacks. This needed to play out perfectly, or he was dead. And then, later on, so was she. He grabbed the last of his bombs and tossed them at Alfonso. "Not this time," he snarled, freezing the objects just as they left his hand. They harmlessly fell around him, useless against him. Thor looked as if someone had killed his dog, and Alfonso looked like the one who had did the deed. Thor took cover from a shield as the vampire rained down a seemingly endless torrent of electrical fury. The shocks were so strong that even his new shield couldn't keep him from being buffeted badly by the attacks. The deafening sound of back-to-back thunderclaps was all Thor could hear. Not that he could pay attention for this sort of thing, seeing as how he was too busy trying not to die. Finally, he let up. The room smelt of burnt metal and hair and hummed with the residual electricity. Thor dropped the smoking shield as it laid on the ground, utterly helpless. With his adrenaline wearing off, the injuries and the fatigue had finally caught up to him. His foe smiled with bloody lips. "So that's it. No more taunts, no more tricks, no more bombs." He groaned painfully. Yep, you're right. That's it for me. I got nothing left. You got me dead to right, son. Of course. Didn't expect me to expand my cold field, did you? That I didn't.
Those bombs would have taken you out easily. My last gamble. Alfonso let out a hearty chuckle. I will give you applause, dwarf. You lasted much longer than I thought. You broke my arm, cracked my ribs, and even knocked out a tooth. Give me a few more minutes and I can do a little bit more. Alas, my dear dwarf, our game has come to an end. But in deference to your tenacity, I will give you a choice. How would you want to die? Thor shot him a tired glance and rolled on his rump. Just make it quick, boyo. Getting a wee bit tired of hearing you talk. Very well. If you're going to die, then by lightning. He slowly raised his glove and pointed it at the helpless dwarf. Goodbye, Mr. Riffall. Then, without warning, Thor moved with an unusual quickness for someone on his last legs, grabbed the shield and covered himself. Before he could ask, Alfonso's vision went white. The room exploded. The blast rocked that section of the castle, throwing everyone, both friend and foe, off balance and left wondering what caused such a rumble. When it died down, the room was a blasted ruin. Small fires lingered about the room. Whatever purpose the room served before, no one could tell now. Thor coughed hard as he dropped what remained of his shield, which had turned dark black and the edges were bent and cracked. His hands were slightly singed from the heat, so that he had to tear a few strips of his shirt and wrap them around his fists. He looked over at Alfonso. He lay in the middle of the room. His broken arm was now completely blown off. His clothes were in tatters, his face was horribly burned, and his Nimbus glove was a wreck. He was still alive, but in so much pain he could barely move. Not looking good there, boyo. But that's what happens when you're the center of such a blast. Ow! I froze them, he croaked. True. But here's the thing. They weren't bombs. What do you... They were called gases, my own little invention. They emit a special type of flammable gas. It has no color or odor, so you didn't really notice. I knew you'd freeze them and forget about them. They filled this room with gas, so all I needed was a spark to set them off. And all I needed to do was get you to fire off a bolt for me. You planned this from the beginning? Hey, you're giving me too much credit. The more I fought you, the more I got a gauge at how the bloody glove worked. Just needed to hit you with a big enough blast to take you out of the game, and fast enough that you couldn't build a proper defense. And I couldn't do that bit in the hole. Was afraid the blast might get diffused. Needed to be contained. And this room was perfect. So, I've lost. Yeah, it's your own fault. The glove itself is powerful, but it was you that was the weakness. You lack any real battle experience. If you had any, you might have killed me off the first 5 minutes of the fight, but for all your bluster and bragging, you're still just a novice compared to me and the others. Alfonso breathed heavily as he took in the dwarf's words. It was true. This was the first real battle he had ever been a part of. He was defeated by someone with more real combat experience. He looked down on him because he was both a dwarf and lowborn, but now he was in no condition to fight. Yeah. Fine. I surrender. Oh, no, it's not over yet, my boy. You still need to take your medicine. Thor's strength returned a bit, allowing him to walk over to the body of his enemy. When he was close enough, he sat on the vampire's chest and punched him as hard as he could. Oh! Wait, stop! Alfonso yelled as he landed another blow in his face. I can't do that, boyo! You see, you insulted a fair lady I know. Can't let that slide. No! Please! Mercy! Mercy! Ah, it's a shame, really. Normally I'm a very nice guy. I let you go in peace, but the lads here, he motioned to his wrapped fist. They've got a bit of a temper, and they've been drinking all day. The sounds of Alfonso of House Bathory made were mumbled pleas for clemency and ever-deadening groans of agony. But Thor did not let up. He sat on him and rained dwarvish hell on him until he breathed no more.
His face was mangled beyond recognition. His monocle was punched so hard into him that it was embedded into his eye socket. A pool of crimson poured from his head. Thorgan stood up, hands thick with blood and totally numb from the violence. Let her learn you, you bastard. He spat as he began to walk away from the body. He was sore, tired, and hurt, and he really wanted to drink. A shot rang out. It was different from the ambient gunfire that he had heard since he'd been here. It was distant but louder than the rest, sharper too. Then for some reason, after hearing that report, he felt a sense of dread run up his spine, like something terrible had happened. Then his thoughts turned to the elf woman who was the reason he showed the noble no mercy. If anyone asked him at that moment, he would have lied. But deep down in his proud dwarf heart, Thorgan was worried deeply for her. You better be alright, you bitch. And so ends the next chapter. Fantastic fight. We got the preambles of a fight that everyone in the chat and probably on the VOD are looking very much forward to. Thorgan saw some action when he had to deal with someone who tried to pretend to be Aurora Monroe in this bitch, but turned out he was nothing but a bitch. And now a single gunshot has stopped his progress, which is a hint for the next fight to come. And it's going to be worlds apart from the one we just saw. Yeah, never threaten his gal. Yes, his gal. Yeah. They're going to have a moment. If they survive, that is. But that we'll have to wait until till Thursday, when we get to some more action as the Battle of Castle Dracula continues to ramp up in violence and excitement. I want to thank everybody who sat in. I want to thank LPH, Devil, CJ, who came in, popped in, but still suffering from a power outage, and everyone watching on the VOD. As a reminder, in case you want to read along or catch up to what's been going on with the story, make sure to check out the entire playlist. And if you want to, and of course, the link in the description, link in the pinned comment below to get yourself a copy of this book. Yes, fun night again, Devil. Yes. Tune in Thursday as we continue our story. But this has been Shintigercurl, that dude in the straw hat, saying good night and see you next time for some